Hi ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Rodriguez and this is Shading the Eyes Part 1, First Layer. So as far as supplies, you're going to need your pencil, a blending tool or Q-tip, your picture, which should be on your iPad, and your paper. Now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to prep my blending tools. Right now we're doing remote learning and we're at home, so I'm trying to use what you would have, which would be Q-tips and tissues. But every once in a while I noticed that I needed a blending tool. At some point you will be able to, in the third or fourth video, use a shading pencil, and then at some point you're going to want a kneaded eraser. So I want you to pause at this point and I want you to just take a look at the diagram. I call her like the tattooed lady. And basically what this is a guide for you to look at so that you can see the arrows are showing you the approximate direction and area that you're going to be shading so that you can follow the contours of a face, or what I call the natural curve. So it's meant to show you that when you shade, you go like in the inside of the eyes, you curved up and to the right and up and to the left. When you start to make the bridge of the nose to the rest of the nose and the cheek, you're going to go slightly down into the right and down into the left. As you work on the skin above the eye, you're going to go up into the right and up into the left. Areas that you want lighter, you will avoid shading as much, and areas you want darker, you'll apply a little bit more shading. Then the curves for the temples, when you shade your eyebrows, go from the inside outward. When you shade the top of the forehead, go to the right and to the left. So this is just meant to be a guide to kind of help you know where to shade. All right, next thing you're going to see is that I start kind of in front of my picture, on top of my picture. I go over back and forth and I follow the curve of the picture to create muscle memory. And then I can go ahead and I can start shading with really light pressure. Okay, I'm also kind of looking at the picture and I'm trying to estimate how far in I need to start my shading. I'm going to recommend for my 6th graders working on your first layer that you always start with a Q-tip or a blending tool first. I don't want you to start right away with a pencil. I believe that if you start with a really light layer, you won't be too overwhelmed, you won't feel like you're making too many mistakes, and it's just a kind of easy way to start you off on shading. So the darkest you can get is kind of like a white gray. Okay, and then I also every once in a while will go over the picture and kind of look for an area that I'm shading. Wherever I avoid, like the center of the forehead, is going to look lighter, and wherever I go back to over and over, it's going to get a little bit darker. Okay, so I create muscle memory here, and I'm usually, when shading the eyes, I'm going to start in that middle section between the eyes, which is the bridge of the nose. And you can see I have been using sketching pressure, and then I shade on one side, then I go back and I shade on the other side. So I'm simultaneously sketching, or shading rather, and I'm going back and forth. Okay, whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. Now, you guys don't have kneaded erasers, so if I go too hard when I'm erasing, I'll go back and re-blend it with a clean Q-tip. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay, then once I'm done with like that inside bridge of the eyes, those two kind of indentation areas, I'm going to go ahead and start slowly sketching or blending downward to the right and to the left, to be able to get the rest of the the rest of the nose, and where it actually bridges over and connects into the cheek area. Now every once in a while you're going to notice that I point back to the picture, because those are areas I'm noticing. Like there's a highlight underneath the eye, so I'm going to avoid those lighter areas, and I'm just going to start with the areas that are a little bit darker. Why? Because I'm less likely to make a mistake if I just go for the darker shaded areas. As you go to the next video or two, you're going to notice that I'll start to slowly add in more shading with not only the Q-tip or blending tool, but then eventually with my pencil. Okay, so just a couple things I want you to just take notice as I'm working. I'm always going to go back and forth, and I am always looking at my own picture while I'm shading. So I'm observing my picture and I'm looking at, okay, where can I go ahead and start adding in a little value? If I work on the, eyelid on one side, I'm going to go and work on the eyelid on the other side. If I'm working on the bridge of the nose on one side, I'm going to work on it on the other side. If I work on one tear duct on the right, I'm going to go to the left. If I'm working on the left, I'm going to go to the right. If I'm working on the forehead on the top left, I'm going to go ahead and then work on the forehead on the top right. So I'm simultaneously always going back and forth when I'm shading, when I'm sketching, when I'm blending. Okay. 2, for this first video, I'm only really shading in the skin areas with a Q-tip, and sometimes you'll see me work with a blending tool. Okay, so at this point I'm going to start to speed up the recording just because it's going to take a little bit too much time if I don't go a little faster. Alright, now also in layer 1, I'm going to have you start shading the iris pupil. So again, I'm going to slow the recording down a little bit because what I want to do is I just want to get some shading value on there. So I'm going to both follow that curve or contour of the eye, and I'm going to use sometimes scumble and sometimes circleism to be able to just add shading to the eye. I'm not too worried about the technique right now because I am going to be blending this first layer of shading to the eye color. Okay, and then you're going to notice sometimes I'm going to speed it up just because I don't want this part to take forever as far as you guys watching it, but I would be really taking my time, slowly layering my color, and then every once in a while blending with the Q-tip or a blending tool. So whatever I shade on the right, then I'm going to go and shade on the left. Obviously, I'm always going to be looking at what I'm doing on the picture. And then every once in a while, I want you to notice this. You're going to see in all the videos I stop, I tilt the picture toward me because I know that if I just leave it at that slight angle away from my face, that I'm going to distort my shading a little bit. So I know I have to stop, tilt it toward me. The light's going to look different when I'm tilting both the picture and the drawing toward me, and then I'm going to observe and take a look what looks right, what needs to be adjusted, and make any changes necessary. Okay, so then you're going to see I started my first layer of shading in the eye, and because I was able to make the iris a little bit darker, now I'm going to start using that extra graphite that's on the Q-tip to start shading the other parts of the eye. And then I'll start with the second layer of shading of the iris, and then I'll probably include the pupil, and I will try to avoid the catch light or the flash inside of the eyes. Just a couple of notes to go over before we finish this video. Before you do any shading, please, please, please completely finish all of your sketching. You don't want to start shading and then try to erase any drawing mistakes. Next, don't forget to erase all of your guidelines. Next, create muscle memory by drawing over the eyes in the air over your picture. Make sure you're using a blending tool or Q-tip to begin the first layer of shading. Also, whenever you are shading, please continue to use sketching pressure no matter what layer you're on. Finally, I hope that you noticed that when I was shading, I worked simultaneously on both the right and the left eye, at the top, at the bottom, on the right eyebrow or on the left eyebrow. I never tried to complete one side. I always worked everywhere back and forth and always was taking a close look at my source or picture while I was working. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.